Today on Wiley the Board series, my guest is in the building already. He's looking all dapper in his afro bow tie. That's the right way. It's perfect. Anyways, for my first time listeners, Wiley the Board series, as always, YFM's innovative radio programming content are designed to develop the youth and provide inspiration to our listeners, both young and old. Now, stats reveal that Ghana's population is young, with about 61% being 30 years and below. The International Labour Organization, ILO's Youth and Future Work of Service shows that about 1/3 of the youth in emerging and developing countries view their future work life with fear and uncertainty. YFM is Ghana's #1 urban and youth station with year-on-year dominance in youth radio programming, according to the Geopoll. Therefore, we deem it a responsibility to add to the bouquet of creative and informative content on our station by hosting leaders and achievers in various sectors and, of course, industries in Ghana and beyond to bring hope, meaning, development, and leadership coaching tips to our vibrant listeners, followers on radio, and, of course, on our social media platforms as well. And so I move on straight to my guest for the day. I'm sure you've seen the pictures out there. For the ones who haven't seen it, we celebrate the life and work of one of the youngest, and I say this with so much pride, one of the youngest and finest brains in our health administrative setup, and of course national politics. His depth of knowledge, effective communication skills, which I really commend, and affable personality, especially during the wake of the pandemic, and the admiration of many across the country, including myself. He's a licensed medical practitioner by profession who holds a BSc, his bachelor's in science in human biology, medicine, and surgery from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KNUST. He also holds a master's degree in public health, MPH, from Hamburg School of Applied Science. His journey as a medical practitioner began with the Ghana Health Service from 2009 to 2012 at the Central Regional Hospital, Department of Surgery, Pediatrics and Obstetrics and Gynecology, Cape Coast from 2009 to 2011, and then at the Department of Internal Medicine, Tema General Hospital. He then continued as a medical officer in the same institution for 4 years. He worked at Kibi Government Hospital, Department of Obstetric and Gynecology, and at the La General Hospital, as well as the Lekma Hospital in Accra. He was elected MP for Lezokuku constituency in the Greater Accra region on December 17th, 2016, and was sworn in on January 7th, 2017. On April 4th, 2020, he was nominated by the President of the land, Nana Akufo-Addo, to serve as a Deputy Health Minister, and was subsequently sworn in on April 21st, which is my birthday, in 2020. Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye joins us on Wiley the Board series today. Guys, join me as welcome the Dapper Doctor. I think that's a new nickname, though, the Dapper Doctor.
Oh, my brother.
How many of these bow ties do you have, by the way?
I think I have quite a decent number.
Quite a decent number, right? And where's the inspiration from? The whole African print in there, because I've never seen.
I was.
I'd be very happy if you can take the mask off. It's been sanitized. We're safe here.
Yeah. But I hope my voice is okay.
It's distorted a bit. That's why I would want it off.
All right.
Yes.
But
with all due respect.
Usually, once we are, as part of the COVID, once we are in an enclosed space, it's good to be in the mask. So
okay, all right, no problem. No problem. All right, we'll go with that. So back to where the inspiration is from with the Afro prints.
Yeah. So I have a lot of admiration or love for traditional dresses.
Okay.
But in Parliament, it so happened that you have to find a way to wear jackets.
Okay.
So I said, okay, if I should wear jackets,
then
there should be something about a jacket that still represents our own. So then I went for the Afro bow tie.
Okay.
And what people don't know is that it's easy to get these bow ties and to put them on compared to the how do you call it, the long tie that you have to now make a knot and with this our job we are always on the go. So you want something that you just put it there and you are gone. And I think so far it's been cool.
It's been a ball. I actually love it because anytime I see Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye, he's in bow tie and Afro prints.
Yeah.
Why? Do you ever have plans? Have you ever thought of maybe starting a brand? Maybe the Bernard bow tie,
Or
the Bernard Afro bow
maybe when I
tie.
get to your level.
We'll talk about that. Anyways, Doctor, welcome to YFM. It's very great to have someone like you on the show today. A lot of us know you on the political scene. We know you in the health administrative scene as well. But people barely know who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, where you started from. Just like any great person, there's a genesis. And so today we're here to basically listen to your stories, all ears for you. Listen to your stories so a lot of us can be inspired. I mean, step by step, where you move from stage 1 to where you are today. The challenges in that especially. People really want to hear how tough the journey was for you. Let's just start off on a very good note, a very grand note as well. Let's say I'm doing a movie about Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye. First scene of the movie, setting, where is he born, where is he raised, what is he doing some many years ago?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I was born, my mom tells me I was born in the Osu maternity home.
Okay.
But my mom and dad all come from Teshi, so I'm 100% Teshi, and I'm a twin.
Wow.
So when you hear Oko, anytime you hear Oko, you should know that the fellow is a twin. So I came with a lady who is Akwele. She's a nurse. She's with the 37 Military Hospital. So I was born in Teshi, and my early days I schooled. My kindergarten was in the military academy training school. Mats, you know, our house is not far from the barracks.
The one around the beaches?
Yes, around the next door.
Nice.
So I went to the kindergarten and then continued at the Field Engineers Basic School, which is a government school. It's like Saito, but it's for the army schools. And it's just opposite the next door beach resort. The school by the roadside. Yeah, that's why I attended from class 1 all the way to JHS 3. So I finished JHS 3 in 97, and then I was through hard work and through God's grace, I had 12 ones. So I got to enter my favorite school then, which was Presec Legon. So I went to Presec in 98, and I offered science, and finished Presec in 2000. And it was in Presec that I had my first taste of leadership or politics. I was the SRC financial secretary, and when I finished Presec, I had to wait 2 years to go to tech. You know, when I finished in our year, you could go to the university the subsequent year, but I was offered pharmacy. And I said, whatever it takes, I wanted to do medicine. And I remember being told that, okay, I think my year was the first batch. Two badges had to go to tech the same year. You know, normally, let's say those who finish in 2000,
yes, would have to.
They have to go. But for the first time, both I think 2000, which is my badge, and then 99, which was the badge before us, were all going to the university at the same time. So I was told that, okay, because of the numbers, if you still want medicine, you have to wait 1 more year. So I was like, why not? So I was in the house. I wrote an application letter. You know, I come from, I don't know the word to use, but, you know, those homes where you have to also support the family so that you can put body and soul together. So I wrote an application to about 12 pharmacy shops from La Scala all the way to Sakumono. Every pharmacy shop, and every single pharmacy shop by the roadside. And I said, look, I did science, I had 12 ones, I'm supposed to stay at home, and I don't want to just be idle, so I want to work with you, because anything you want me to do. So I remember at the Sakumono Junction, they have one pharmacy they call Benanj. I think they've stopped operating. The owners left and settled, I think, in the States. But the boss saw my results, and I was like, wow, I mean, to have such a person want to work with us, why not? So they took me on, and guess what? I wasn't the one selling the drugs. I was in charge of cleaning the pharmacy, making sure the place is clean. If people come, I have to serve, support, even sometimes the kids. More or less like not a house help, but a shop help.
That was not what you applied for.
Yeah, that's not what I applied for. But, you know, I don't belittle any kind of job, any kind of work that you you want me to do, I mean, I am ready to do. Of course, if it's work that is decent, and I consider any work that others do for salary as decent. I mean, cleaning a shop, whatever. So I worked with them. They were so excited with me. And I remember when I finally got my admission, they even supported me with some funds because of the way I worked and related with them. So then I went to tech and I started medicine. And I remember in the second year, some came to me and said, Doc, so they were like, Oko, we know you were active in Presec. Why not do politics here? And, although I had a lot of love for politics, in fact, I was the campaign manager for one of the SRC presidents in my second year. So they are like, when I was campaigning, they said, why are you campaigning for someone? You should be standing yourself. But the reason why I didn't go myself is that, we are coming from a very humble home. Sometimes even what to eat was a problem. So you didn't have the strength to now pay money into billboards and make bills and try and spend on other activities. So I got convinced by one mate in Presec who came to me, Maximus, and said, Doc.
That's a political name.
Yeah, Maximus Edusafo. He was my mate in Presec, and then we went to tech. And he was like, look, I'm ready to go for SRC president, but I need you on board. I told myself quietly that, well, as the running mate, you don't need to, if you don't have the funds, you can bring your energy and your talents on board. So I was more or less the leader of the campaign, making a strong case why we had to be voted for. So in the third year, I became the SRC vice president, and then Maximus was the president. So finally, we finished tech. That's the first 4 years of medicine. I got a BSc degree in human biology, and then had to go to Kofanochi to continue the last 3 years. So in Kofanochi too, I was involved in student politics, medical students association, MSc. So I went for the elections for MSc president, and one of the accusations was that as for me, I'm a professional politician, so they should not allow me to
That's your field.
Get into the student politics. They felt that I was doing national politics, because even by tech time, Kofanochi time, I was going on radio to speak for the NPP. I don't know, at an early age, all my relatives, most of them were NDC. But growing up, I felt that they couldn't convince me why they were doing NDC. And I was liberal, so I joined the NPP.
With that.
So finally, I went for my MSc elections, medical students, and I lost by a margin of 2 or 3 votes. It was one of the closely most contested elections.
Yes.
And I learned a lot of things from that, which helped me actually
to contest
to win 2016. Because almost everybody told me, oh, you had won this election. You've done so well. You speak, your policies are clear. And then after the election, I went to sleep. In fact, during the election, I was just relaxing and chilling.
Because you thought you had won.
Only to realize that a lot of funny things happened. So the lesson I learned from that election is that until the last ballot is counted, it wasn't over.
You haven't won.
So, I brought that into my constituency election. So finally, I finished tech in 2009. I went straight to Central Region to practice. And then after some time, I went around the country. I like to travel. Work. Went to Dunkwa Onofin in the Central Region. I went to Chebi, finally came to Tema General. And then in 2015, I went on leave without pay to do my constituency politics. And then, but I have not brought Germany in whilst I was in Kidney.
We're going to get to that.
All right.
I mean, all this that you said, trust me, is just a summary.
Yeah.
I'm super interested in getting the details in there.
Absolutely.
Which is actually going to move me to take you back all the way to your childhood again.
No problem.
I mean, science is a field you've conquered now. I say you've conquered because you've done a lot in there. Yeah. You've experienced a lot in there for years. Was this your interest growing up, or you had other career aspirations? Did you always want to be a doctor?
Well, I don't know. I think, in school, I found science to be interesting. Interesting because I saw science to be a subject that was a living thing. A living thing as in. Science is not dead. There are some areas that I read, and it's like this is what has been found in this area, and that's it. But with science, it's like it can change. You know that you are reading about this particular discovery. You've been told that it has changed 3-4 times. So I saw science to be action. It's a subject where you have to be humble to know that what you know now can change tomorrow. You must have an open mind, and you must also be willing to be tested, to think outside the box and all that. So that is what drew me to science. And as kids, I had to do some surgery when I was in the GHS. And I remember my mom took me to 37 Military Hospital. And there's this doctor, may his soul rest in peace, Dr. When a name comes out, mention.
Sure.
He's one of the very good surgeons in 37 Military Hospital. And anytime we had to see this doctor, we were in a queue. And we go there very early in the morning. We get there sometime around 5 a.m. And we wait there, we'll sit the whole time. And when this doctor comes around 8:39, he was gorgeously, he's in his white robe, he's a German trained. And he comes and he has some aura, some nobility, and we are all looking at us, who is this man? He said, he's the doctor. I was like, I want to be like this. And when you are interacting with him, he's very nice, he's very calm, and he comes with some hope. It's like when we see him, we know that, look, the problem will be solved. So from that experience, I told myself, I want to be a physician and a surgeon as well. So that is where the medicine thing came from when I was in the junior high school, I think class 6 or so.
So what kind of student were you back then? I mean, the primary age, while you were at the military school, the one you mentioned? Yes.
Yeah, field engineers.
Were you active? Were you a quiet student?
Well, I was a very outgoing person. I wasn't quiet. In fact, I was troublesome. I lived in mine wasn't a nuclear family. We were in like a compound house. So it's those houses where you have the freedom to go out there, go and play soccer. My favorite sport is soccer, and I still play. It's one of my most interesting activities. And I was a very good footballer. I remember in Presec, I didn't play ball that much until they had some inter-houses when we were in the third year, the final year. And I went on the field for the first time. The PE boss was very angry at me. He was like, how come you went to hide this whole time? So soccer is one of my favorites. So I was a very outgoing person. I wanted to always discover new things, relate, get close to others. So in terms of nature, I was very, I was an extrovert. I still think I am an extrovert who is always looking at ways to bond with others and to build alliances. Yeah.
All right, great. But was there any challenging moment for you as a kid growing up?
Yeah, I think, my mom was a storekeeper. She had, my dad was working, he's a typist, and we were not living, they were separated, so we were living with my mom. And it was not easy, it was tough. There were occasions where school fees was a problem. And, the fees we were paying even at the army school, it's not really a private school, so it's not any big deal, looking at then, but because of the nature of the family, I had about 4 siblings. I have 3 sisters. Myself, we are 4 with my dad. My mom also has 2 children, so 6 in all. So because of the numbers and looking at the salary she was earning, it was difficult. And one of the moments I remember so well was one time when I was sacked from school for not paying my fees. That was, I think, in class 4, class 5. And later in class 6 or so, I was sacked school fees again. And this time the headmistress said she wasn't going to take me back. And I remember my mom tried and got the money, went to beg her. She said, no, this guy has been defaulting on fees severally. And that was it. I think myself and my twin sister. So luckily for my mother, she went to call people, they came to beg. The headmistress said no. I mean, I had to leave the school and go to the, maybe the very public cluster schools, maybe there, you don't have to pay any token. And then finally, one day my mom went to beg, and then she met this lady who is a neighbor, and she belongs to. She's a good friend of the headmistress. They belong to they come from the same hometown. So they spoke their own language. I mean, they are not Gans. And then the woman saw my mom. It's like, what are you doing here? I was like, oh, this is a neighbor, so she knows us. He said, oh, is it not your boy Oko? The woman said, she's not taking them back and the sister because of school fees. I was like, oh, this is not a big deal. Let me talk to her. She just spoke to her in some nice familiar language, and you guys can come back to school.
Wow.
And that's where, like Mandela said, I realized that language is powerful. If you speak someone's language, you speak to the heart. If you have learned their language, you're only speaking to the head or the mind. And I think that was a very sobering moment. And it's the reason why I put a lot of value on single mothers or parents who go the extra mile to make sure that their kids get education. Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned that before you got admission into KNUST, you had to work at a pharmacy store. Well, initially you thought you were going to work as an attendant, but you ended up being the janitor there, so to say.
Yeah.
Were you paid around that time?
Yes,
was it a paid salary?
Yes.
Do you remember how much money you were earning then?
I think it was money that you could use to take care of yourself and maybe spend just something little for school later. So my excitement was not even in the money, but the fact that I was engaged, And I always tell my colleagues that, look, if I were not a physician, although people say, oh, it's difficult to get a job in Ghana, I tell them, if the attitude is right, it will be difficult to sit at home. I see so much opportunity in this country. I tell people, like, there are a lot of young folks who come to me and go, I want a job. There's one lady I spoke to. I said, look, go to 3-4 hospitals. She was a nurse. She said she has sat at home. I said, go to tell them you want to work. You don't want a salary. And they'll be shocked. You just want to apply your skills. And no decent person will see you contribute to their setup, their output, and let you go home every day without a stipend. And within a month of working, she was taken on. There was one I also asked to go to Rich Hospital. I said, just go there and not work. Today, the hospital has absorbed her. So the point is that if you want to be engaged, I just went there to be engaged. I didn't have my own standards. And that's one thing I tell people, that if you don't want to be disappointed, don't set too many limits for yourself. Go to the place, get engaged, give your heart out. And I remember I went to the States between preclinical and clinical years. That's when I finished tech. I was in the US. That was the first time I think I traveled even outside the country. I was in the US for some 3 or so months before coming to continue with my clinical years. When I went to US, I was in New York. I worked in a dry cleaner's shop. And I was like the attendant there, putting clothes in the machine, trying to arrange them and all that. And I gave my heart out. I really worked with them. I was nice, very humble and cool. And there was one customer, a white guy, who came and told my boss, that my boss is a Korean, these were Asians, that he has had a lot of workers who have come and gone. This guy is so good, he has to do everything to keep him. And on the day he was saying that, I was leaving the next day to Ghana. But you see, when you go and tell them you are working for some time, you leave, normally you are not engaged. So the office that sent me there, normally they send you as a worker with no limits. Yeah. But the point is that it's because of the way I related to even the customers.
Yes.
The customer went out of his limits to tell the guy that you have to keep this guy. And I think if that attitude is absorbed or is taken on board, I mean, a lot of the youth, a lot of young folks will get something to do.
What were the principles, the ideals that kept you as a young guy? I mean, growing up here in Accra, there are a lot of things one may fall into if care is not taken. You were able to keep it till date. I'm sure you had friends, you had your times, you had the good moments, and that. What were the things you held on to that kept you focused till date?
I I think I should have bought a copy of my book. My first book was entitled The Audacity of Ambition, which basically speaks about my perception of life, what drives me, and what makes me go into all kinds of areas. And in the book, I mentioned my early days where I attended the Baptist church.
Yeah.
And we were also part of a club they call the Awana Club, which is the Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. It's an acronym.
Okay.
And it's a club that combines Bible teachings with sports and other activities to try and make sure that there is positive energy that is brought out of the youth. And my brother, I think most of those teachings I had in my early days had a way of creating a relationship between myself and a superior being. And when I say superior being, I say it without any shame that I am a Christian, as in a follower of Christ. And the teachings we had served as a solid foundation, and also like a breaking, like we call breakwater. You know, when you go to the beach, they have this structure that calms the waves, and it helps us to. It has a way of restricting you to keep you in check. Because there are many places I went where I was alone, and you had the freedom to do, like you're saying, to do and go any other direction. But I think I can say confidently that it has taken those teachings of trying to live a life that is worthy, a life knowing that you'll be accountable one day for whatever you do. And so these are things that makes you, even when you're on your own, it tells you that what you are doing, is this something that you can defend before your maker? And I think largely those are the things that has kept me, that makes me focused and very humble. And I think I always tell folks that, look, it's not about religion, it's about the teachings. You need some teachings, because there are times when things would happen you can't explain with the human mind, no matter how smart you are, and you need to have some some support or backing for you to know that, look, it doesn't look the way I want it today, but the end would be good. And it takes that relationship to have that kind of attitude, and I think it served me well.
Very insightful, man. I'm inspired already. I'm getting into that mood already. Anyways, now that same ambition must have driven your desire to pursue a master's degree in public health from the Hamburg School of Applied Science. Tell me about it. How did that come about, the application process, you leaving Ghana? That was not the first time you had left Ghana, by the way, right? You had gone to the US before. Great. What moved you to apply to the School of Applied Sciences in Hamburg? And then tell me how the procedure was like for you when you got there. It was your first time, what you went through?
I think I got to Hamburg in 2013. And 2012, I already had set up Teshi Lejokuku for Kufaru 2012. I was very active in the 2012 campaign. I was doing a lot of community work, getting close to people, identifying their challenges, trying to make life better for them, and trying to solicit support for the Dankwa Buzia tradition. You know, Lejokuku, where I come from, they vote more towards the NDC, so I was trying to get them to appreciate some of the things that came from our place. Now, for a doctor to be engaged in leadership, I knew that my place was not necessarily the theater or the consulting room, although I go to the consulting room. Later I'll let you know why I still go to the consulting room. But I knew that my medicine or health practice had to be at the community level. Community level is like with COVID now. You are managing a condition which is not restricted to one area, but at the whole national community level.
I get it.
So to get the skills to impact health or to advise on health issues at the community level, the area you need to specialize is public health. And public health is defined as the art and science of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting healthy living. The art and science of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting healthy living through the through the harnessed energies of community members. And so the definition itself told me that, look, this is the way to go. So then I applied. I went to Hamburg because their program allowed you to go back to your country and work,
when you're done,
and then come and then do some studies. I was actually living in Bremen. Bremen is about 1 hour by train from Hamburg. It's in the northern part of Germany. And I was going regularly to Hamburg to do the studies. My wife was then in Germany. She grew up there. So I took the opportunity also to be frequenting the family, visiting them whilst doing the studies. And when I finished, I had to come back. It was a nice experience trying to learn. I got here before time.
Yeah.
These are some of the things you pick when you train in other jurisdictions. You are told to be there before time because the train is not going to wait for you for a minute.
It never waits.
And I gave my assistant 9 o'clock this morning. I picked him from a particular junction to this place. And I got there before 9, 2 minutes before 9. He got there 7 minutes after 9. I told him, today is the last day. The next time I'm going to leave.
The last warning.
Exactly. So these are things you pick along the line, which totally helps in your makeup. Yeah.
Did you learn the German language?
Yes.
Was it part of the
yes, I learned some basic German. I even had the A1 certificate. I wanted to do A2.
Okay.
And so I have what the Germans would call good Kenntnisse in Deutsch. That's basic knowledge in Deutsch. So, yeah, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. That's how I speak a little bit Deutsch.
I was trying to remember my German, but the last German I met is no longer around. Anyways, you mentioned family. I'm quite interested, in talking about that at this point. How much has fatherhood shaped your way of approaching life situations now?
I think, to be honest, what fatherhood has taught me is patience. Sometimes one thing I admit is that my energy levels sometimes are too much. Even in my politics, if you should find me having either a confrontation or a disagreement with someone, it will be disappointment about an event, but using too much energy to show the disappointment. And one of the things I'm learning is patience, because sometimes the kids will come and ask a question which if an adult would have asked, I would be upset. Go like, how can you ask such a funny question? But this time, these questions come and I don't only have to listen, I have to answer, and answer smiling, so it teaches you how to be very patient, and that's one thing. So my daughter came recently, and asked me, where's your mom? Because I think the mother told her that my mom is gone, she's no more. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. He said, where's your mother? Did she go to, is it that she was scared of horses, or she mentioned some animals as to why she's not around? And I'm like, well, she's going to heaven. And then I think it was a good answer because she was quiet. And then I heard her go to tell the mother that, well, that says that the mom is going to heaven, But I'm sure later I would explain what all that means. But that's what fatherhood has taught to patience. And then also, it's also giving me the inner perspective. Some of us, because of the way we are driven, we're always looking at outside in the community, beyond the community. How do you impact lives? How do you leave a legacy? And sometimes, if you are not careful, the external force will be so big, internal force will be zero. So I'm learning to appreciate an hour at home. Listen to even the homework. Sometimes the kids bring the homework and I go through with them. And these are things that maybe it was also divine that the elections didn't actually go the way I wanted. Because a lot of things are happening that I'm sure if I was still in Parliament by now, I leave home. One time, those days when I was still the member of Parliament, I remember my second child came to me one day and said, how come you always are not around? Because I leave home before they wake up and I come when they are asleep. So it can be a week and we've not met, so, and I told them I have to go to work. And then one said, but if this is what you do, then we cannot play. And I said, okay, the time for playing will come very soon. So maybe now the time for some activities has come.
I like that. But do they know who you are? Your role in the nation and all that, development and all that, they know who you are?
I think sometimes their mom makes them watch the television when I go on the morning shows. So when I come, they tell me, we were on the television, we saw you. And I go like, yeah, I was working. And sometimes my daughter comes and says that, but you are the minister. And minister. And sometimes you say, are you going to Akufo-Addo? Anytime I step out, because those days they go like, why are you going? I say, I'm going to Akufo-Addo. So I think with time, their comments tells me the level of appreciation they have for what I do. And once the comment shows that they have upgraded, I also upgrade.
You also upgrade?
Yes,
I do get
that. What I say. Yeah.
Doc, do you believe in the assertion, marriage makes a man better?
Yeah, it is true. It is true because marriage makes you, like I said, patience is one. The other one also is listening to the other perspective, even when you fight it. Sometimes, that's when I'm frank. My wife will say something, I'm not for it. You can be all against it. And then later you think about it and go like, well, there's some truth in this, and all that. So it makes you learn the art of listening to the other perspective, which is something which is good for all of us, because the more opinions you have, the more likely you take a good decision.
That's true. That makes perfect sense. Doc, would you, given the opportunity, right, what would you do differently with regards to your role as a father? If we're supposed to backdate things now, if we're supposed to turn back the hands of time, what would you do different?
Well, I would have loved to be the teacher in one particular activity for my kids. I say so because one thing I have learned is that when you expose children to a particular activity early, and you, the parent, are also the teacher, it makes them masters of that particular game. And I always cite the example of, if you look at Kobe, Kobe Bryant's mom was a physical trainer or instructor at the high school level. So she was the one teaching him the game of basketball. And if you take people like Abedi Pele, it's obvious. He was in a particular activity. He had the opportunity to guide his own. And the best role model for kids is the parents. So when you also now are the teacher in a particular art, it makes things very exciting. If you look at the Serena sisters, their dad was the one who was taking them. He had a time. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One driver, the dad was the coach or the person who was there. So it is one thing that if I could turn the hands of time, I would have wished to have the opportunity to be the teacher in a particular activity. Because of my external activities, my politics, my leadership,
really paid attention to all that.
I'm taking away most of the time. But now, I think the area where I can be the teacher a little is in the area of the homework, the sciences, because my son, my firstborn, comes around sometimes to ask me some science questions. One time he came and said, "What is a paramecium?" I nearly said, "I don't know what it is." And I was like, wait a minute, but this is something that I've read so much about. So when I just sat back and the things started coming, I nearly wanted to write a book on it because almost all the things came.
We're coming back to you.
It's a one-cell organism, it has flagellates, it has this. And then I mentioned just one or two and it was like, oh yeah. So that's it. I was like, wow. So these things will come back to me.
Yes.
I need to go back for my books.
Wow, great moments on there. Yeah. Doc, I want to find out, right? You had your house job at the Ghana Health Service from 2009 to 2012, after which you continued as a medical officer at the Ghana Health Service for 4 years. How similar or different were those those two periods at the beginning of your career in terms of exposure and your level of motivation? Ghana Health Service, and then medical officer.
Yeah.
You did your housing job there.
Yeah.
The house job. First and foremost, please, for the sake of the ones who are not very inclined when it comes to the medical institutions and the steps in there, what is the housing job, and what is your role? How different is it from being an officer there and a house job?
Yeah, so actually, when you finish medicine and you become a doctor, you're supposed to learn under, let's say, a senior person, in the hands of a senior person. So you're a doctor, all right. But your first 2 years, then when I finished, your first 2 years, we call it housemanship. The term houseman means that really in the hospital, you are virtually there all the time. If you take the hospital as a house, your boss can go home and come. But as for you,
you are there.
You're supposed to know everything about the patient and report your observations to your boss,
okay,
so that your boss can guide you
okay,
to administer effective treatment. So when they say I did my house job with the Ghana Health Service, Ghana Health Service is a broad entity. All government hospitals actually are sort of under Ghana Health Service. So that's an agency, and its units are so Tema General is under Ghana Health Service. Lekma Hospital is under Ghana Health Service. So except for the teaching hospitals, they are more or less on their own. Like Kolibu is on its own, Kofanoche is on its own, but Tema General, Koforidua Hospital, they all come under one big umbrella, and that's Ghana Health Service. So I started with the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital. When I was there, then it was Central Regional Hospital. And I remember when I went for interview, to be placed. When you finish school, those days, you had to go for an interview. You choose where you want to go. So I chose Central Regional Hospital. So I went for the interview. And then the professors were like, why are you going to Cape Coast? Because they realized that I was born and bred, raised in Accra, came to school in Kumasi, and now people are lobbying to go to Accra. And you, the Accra guy, you go like,
want to come to Cape Coast.
So they asked me, I was like, well, I want to explore. They were not convinced. But anyway, they were like, well, we want people to go outside Accra. So if you Accra guy says you want to go outside Accra,
why not?
Fine. And then my roommate, my very good friend, Dr. Damson, is called Shaggy. In school, we're very good. In fact, we're three Bernard. He's also Bernard. There's a third Bernard, Bernard Brew, who is also an ONG specialist now in Koforidua as well. The three of us were very good friends. So when I left the room, the one who came after me for the interview was Shaggy. So they asked him. He was also going to Central Regional Hospital. So they're like, do you know the guy who came before you? So that's his best friend. They said, okay, now they understand. That this guy came and was saying funny things, but he wasn't bold to tell us he was following you to your hometown. Because Shaggy was born, raised, Cape Coast guy. And so that's how come I went to Central Regional Hospital. And like I said, I had the heart of working anywhere I go, no limits or standards. So I went there with a clean heart and enjoyed my first. I think I did 3 rotations there. I did pediatrics, I did obstetrics, and I did surgery. And 1.5 years. And finally, I had to leave and come to Tema because, I was asking questions. I had an open mind. I like to improve systems. I like to not take on, but to engage leadership. Unfortunately, the leadership there thought that I was too much of I was more than a mouthful for them. So there were some issues, allegations and all that. And someone just approached me and said, look, they think you are too...
You were a threat to them?
Yeah. So try and find some level and leave. So I was like, why not? Let me go to Tema. In fact, Shaggy left to Tema when he felt things were funny. And I was like, no, I don't want to move. So
you were a bit stubborn about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So later I had to move and join Shaggy again at Tema. We're always moving together. So I remember even before leaving Central Region, I went to Ridge Hospital, talked to them that I wanted to move to Ridge. Ridge said yes to me. And then later, Ridge was being hesitant. So I remember one big man at the regional director said, young man, is there any story about you? And I told him what happened at Cape Coast. He said, yeah, that's why the man is scared. The man doesn't want to take you. So finally I went to Tema, finished with Tema, and then, I learned a few things from the public sector that people don't like change that much. They also don't like people who are frank and ask questions. They like you to toe the line and all that. And some of those things helped me to survive at places like Kolebu when I was the board chairman. And in my life in general in Ghana, I know how to behave when I go to a private setting. I also know how to behave when I go to a public setting. I know what you have to do to change things. You can't change things in Ghana. It's difficult to change things from the bottom. It's easier to be changed when you're at the top, when you're in charge, because then you are the implementer.
Then you implement the changes you want.
Absolutely.
From the bottom, it sounds like you're being a threat.
Yes. In fact, I remember one big guy at a facility I worked called me and said, "Look, you ask too many questions. You probe and ask people. You make even people who are in charge feel like they don't know they are left and right by the way you go about your things sometimes." So he told me if I were to be in Russia, such people, what they would do to me is to bundle me one day, go and give me some injection, which is a psychiatric drug, then write in my folder that I have a history of psychiatric case, so that even when I speak sense,
it won't make sense.
They will not take it. They will just tell people that he's a psychiatric person.
Those things are real? Yeah. I thought it was in the movies.
No, yes. But and this guy trained in Eastern Europe. But I remember his words so well. It tells you the level to which the system can fight you if you try to change it at the wrong position. So these are things that you learn only from experience, and it's helped me a lot. So I hardly get into conflict with people. I just try and make sure that I am at the level where I can change my things.
Doc, let me ask this question. I think if I decide to keep this for later, I might die out.
Yeah.
Would this be the inspiration behind you developing interest? I mean, put aside the way through which you got into politics. Would this be a fair reason as to why you wanted to get into active politics, into policy making?
Yeah.
So you can implement the changes you want?
Absolutely. I am one that takes a lot of pride in having effected positive change. Positive change that will impact individual lives and the community. That's what drives me in leadership. I tell people that most of the jackets I wear, I had them before I went to Parliament. And it is not the external things that makes me excited. It is the fact that you can refer to 2 or 3 projects and say that it took a lot of drive and energy to bring these things on board. And just, when was it, Monday, I went to Lekman Hospital to consult. When I finished, I went to the Teshi Landing Beach. It's a $20 million project, which I fought hard to get government to come and start. My people have looked forward to such a project that allows them to fish in a decent environment. And I visited the project because anytime I see the project unfold, then I have a good sleep. So we are driven by policies and efforts that would bring transformation. And you can imagine that until I became the member of Parliament, for the past 70 or 80 years, my ancestors over there and those there now have done the fishing in the open waters, fighting the waves and all that. And now, in your time, you have a situation where there is a breakwater, there is a landing site, there is everything done decently. And the next 70 years, that will be the story. So I am always driven by opportunities for creating change. And that is what, at the end of the day, some of us want to be remembered for. It's easier to remember for things when you change them. You know what? There's a reason why people don't fancy change and have some good love for the status quo. Because managing things in the old way doesn't require too much thinking, doesn't require too much innovation, doesn't require too much effort. But if you want to push yourself so that things can be better, you must be uncomfortable with the system. And that is what I always look out, is opportunity I always look out for, how to change things. Very soon this year, I'm sure latest by June, I'll release a book on the Kolebu Teaching Hospital.
Your experience there?
Yes, how the place was made quiet. It was a very tumultuous, very unpredictable environment, and I went there. And it took a lot of courage and a lot of wisdom and a lot of stakeholder consultations to put in place some structures, change some arrangements that, by the grace of God, has secured that environment for now. And the joy in writing the book is to say that I was not comfortable with the status quo. I dared to push myself
beyond it.
there to listen to others so that together we could change the system. Because I remember Professor Frimpong Barton wrote a book about Kolebu. The title was Taming the Monster. And all he said in summary was that Kolebu is like a monster that cannot be killed. It can only be tamed. And what I've written in my book is that the title is Monster Turned Mother. So what I also try to say is that it looked like a monster, but in reality it's a loving mother.
Yeah.
But it's because some things made it so. You know, and you can imagine when I was going to Kolebu, there are many folks who were like, Kolebu is a big place, man. You have to position yourself. You can make a fortune. You can do this. You have power. That was not the driving force. The driving force is this, where it can be said that then it was like this,
but then now
it's changed.
I like that. That's very. This is motivation, if you ask me. I mean, the plight to change things into a better situation should drive every young man into, charting new territories.
Absolutely.
Still on that, let me find out from you. I mean, in Cape Coast, you just described how things were a bit challenging for you in terms of you changing the situation there. You had opposition from the top, so to say. When you moved to Lekma and then in Teshi, was a situation like that? Or you changed? You mentioned that you learned how to now address things in the public sector and the private sector. Were things different for you there, or did you change to suit how Lekma was like?
Yeah. So one other lesson is that when you are a leader or an active community member, sometimes it's better not to wait to be fed with problems happening in the community. You must find a place where you operate, where you'll be able to identify the problems or be aware of the problems yourself. So immediately I got involved. I was on a health committee in Parliament. In the MPP, I was more or less one of the party members who had some knowledge in health policy management. So I was also giving advice to my people. The best place to pick the challenges in the system, I believed, was the consulting room or working in a government hospital. And so at an early stage, right when I became an MP, I went to Lekma, got enrolled as a doctor over there, but without salary. So the intention was not to get some extra money. In Parliament, they can even excuse you to get extra money. But the intention was to operate at a place where I can pick issues directly from the ground. So that now when I am with our health minister or I'm with the president, I'm with anybody, and I'm speaking about the challenges in the system, I speak as one who is living with the challenges, who gives you solutions that are real.
Yeah, realistic solutions, yes.
Absolutely. So that was the motive for operating in Lekma. And I can say that there are a lot of basic things that I helped to improve by just being a worker there. I remember there was a time I just called the administrator and went, look, your curtains sometimes are dusty. When you shake them, you see there's a lot of dust from them. These are things that can be worked on easily. Just have to rally around your orderlies, those who work, let them wash them. You need strong supervision. They must have a feeling that you are always watching.
Always watching.
And just by saying so, within a week, all these things changed. I mean, you can only have impact at that level when you're operating from within. So, like I said, if you make me the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, there are things I'll change in a week. If I go and work in Lekma as a consulting doctor, there are things I'll change. Every change correlates to the level at which I operate.
That makes sense.
Because that makes the change smoother. But if you are trying to effect a drastic change at Lekma, where the Lekma boss himself reports to a regional boss, who reports to a national boss, your change can upset. It will turn it, like the science will say, you turn it into a disequilibrium, which can have negative consequences. So every level you operate and what you can impact.
And you do respect that. From all the things you said, you really respect that.
Yes.
These are things you learned on the field.
Yeah.
In your personal assessment, right, this is just you, what so far has been the biggest milestone you've achieved practicing as a doctor? And what level of satisfaction does it bring to you whenever you think about it?
Well, in terms of milestone, let me say that as a Christian, I know that a lot of these things happen because of God's favor. because I am 39 years. I'm not 40 yet.
Yes.
And by His grace, I'm a former member of Parliament, meaning I've experienced Parliament. By His grace, I'm a former board chairman for the biggest hospital in this country. By His grace, I am someone who's had specialization in public health. By His grace, I'm someone who is still engaged in a lot of community work, even outside Greater Accra. So there are a lot of things that have happened at my personal level in terms of achievements, which I thank God for. Then at a community level, I thank God also that I can speak to the landing beach. Like I said, these are very serious legacy issues, because my folks called me and told me that, look, these are things we've looked for in a century. If you can get them for us, it will go a long way to make you be remembered. And as we speak, Magdan, if anybody's listening to YFM, they should give him shout outs. I was able to get Magdan, convince him, talk to him to invest 30 million Ghana cedis into a Teshi Sports Complex.
Wow.
And I visited the complex just on Monday, a few days ago. And as I speak, the artificial pitch is in. It's a multi-purpose complex that's going to have a boxing gym, having an AstroTurf, standard size, that's going to have other smaller pitches, going to have a tennis court, a hostel, all in one community. And all also private sector led through leadership and through through partnership. And I remember one day Magdan was talking to me. He said, Doc, as part of my projects, when I build such an entity, it is the Magdan sports complex. Would you have a problem with that? I'm like, the most important thing is to have the structure.
To have it there.
I don't mind putting you, all of your body on it for many years to come. So he saw that it was not about me, it is about the community. And these are things that would continue to give me joy, because they will outlive even a political office. And I am grateful for that.
Doc, you just mentioned that you're 39 years old. Growing up, did you ever see yourself achieving all these things that you just mentioned at age 39? Realistically, did you see yourself coming this far at age 39?
Well, Christ was 33 when he left us. So I'm one of those folks who believes that what must be done ought to be done quickly, because you don't know how long you are going to stay around. And I've also come not to envy too much those who live beyond 100, because you can live beyond 100 and nobody knows you're around. So really, I don't know how many years I got here. I want to get all my things done quickly.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible, so that when I'm going, I don't look back.
When you're done, when your maker calls you, I am done with my work.
Yes.
You just go and drop your doc out there and say, hey, the work is done. Now give me my position.
Yes, I'm
Let me
done.
move on. I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. 49 past 10, Y107.9 FM, Y Leaderboard Series. We're out here with Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye. 0202222073. Get your questions in. Hashtag is Y Leaderboard Series. In a bit, I'll be diving to our Twitter to pick out your questions. So if you have one, just put in the hashtag Y Leaderboard Series. If it's for Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye, I'll definitely serve it to him. Now let's talk a little bit about politics and the Ministry of Health. Your time there. Among each group of politicians, each person may have a different story of how they got into politics. You touched on a little bit of how things moved. Grew into what it is now. How did you get into active, national politics, and what is unique about your story?
Yeah, so I grew up in a compound house, like I always say, and I remember there is this man, Bra Kwame. He's still around. I met him.
Shouts going out to you, Bra Kwame.
Yeah, he was an MPP fanatic, and he always, in the compound house in which we live, my mom was NDC. Most of our Ghana folks in there were NDC. He himself and some other man were accounts. They were strong MPP. And he always told me that, look, that's why you're a smart kid. He talks to me, he goes like, you're a smart kid. And he jokingly goes like, that's why you are going to be book long. And that we, in this party, we speak to issues and policies. So this is where you belong. Don't follow your mom, okay? And I go like, Bra Kwame, here, you're sounding, correct, so I'm with you. So Bra Kwame always tries to get me to. Even, that was at a tender age, 9-10 years. And there was one time, I'll never forget, that Edu Boahin, when he was a parliamentary presidential candidate, that was I think 92, came to Lejekuku. and Black Army got me. We had to walk close to 45 minutes to a site where the Boye had come, and there was the fever and the energy and the party colors blew by at 10 years, and I was charged. So when we came back, we was like, look, this is where to belong. As for your mother, she's lost. Don't follow her, because my mom was saying this.
Yeah.
So it was there that this activity of, public engagements, trying to impact lives of people through politics and all that started to get to me. And when I went to Presec, it even more or less formed well, because Presec, I joined SRC because I saw some of my guys, they are good friends, become prefects, and I knew them to be some way. I knew that I'm like, if this guy's a prefect and my brother comes first year, Charlie, my brother is in trouble. So I thought that, look, some of us, had to go into SRC to be advocates for the less privileged or the vulnerable. Looking at some of the hawks I'd seen
that were at the top.
Yes, So my first bite at politics was out of love or affection for the less privileged, and that has always been my drive. I mean, anytime, and that's what makes me. I tell people when I meet them, look, I'm one of those politicians who has to wake up only with an alarm, because I don't try to undermine. I don't try to engage in a scheme that can hurt someone or a group to get something fiscally or material thing for myself. Yeah. So once you are driven by that, you're always at peace. I came here straight from the house. From here, I'm going to the house, listen to radio, do some few readings. I try to engage myself with a PhD program. So I've enrolled into a PhD program. Hopefully in 3 years, God willing, I finish, and then either I'm in frontline doing politics or in the lecture room trying to teach and all that. So, I mean, the point is that I always try to look for opportunities to impact people or add some knowledge, add some more knowledge. It takes knowledge to help people more. That's what I tell folks. If you don't have a lot of things up there, your help will be limited. The muscle can help people, but it can't help people as much as the brain.
The brain could.
A big muscle helps, but a bigger brain is more, can go a lot. Yeah.
I like that. It's no coincidence you are an author. You speak so much sense. I mean, I'm glad I had the opportunity to actually meet you today. Now, apart from the goodwill of the people, you just mentioned that having the goodwill of the people at heart is what has driven you. What other valuable attributes must one possess? I mean, for the sake of the ones who might want to get into politics along the line, especially as a young person to succeed in their political, or career or ambitions, what other valuable attributes must one possess apart from having the goodwill of the people at heart?
I think you must be empathetic. Empathy. You must see yourself in people's shoes. And when you have that spirit, you'll be driven to help. It's operating your comfort zone all the time can make life very boring. If all you have to take care of is your wife and maybe 2-3 kids, I tell people that is too small an assignment. You have to be empathetic. I attended field engineers. I visited a school the last time. The place is the same. The teachers are using some small room which I sat in class 4 as the staff common room. Even air to enter, the ventilation is poor. I talked to the headmistress. He said, well, if you can help us with the staff common room. That was when I was the MP. And I told her we're going to do this. And then the elections happens, I'm not the MP. And I went there the last time with an architect. I said, we are taking drawings. He said, but you're no more in office. I said, this is a project that is worth continuing. We are going to do this project. If I push myself and this project happens, the joy will be that a child can go, it's a library and a staff room. It's a 2-story. I didn't get to sit in a library that has Wi-Fi in school. That is a dream. But when these kids from very humble homes, they are not attending a private school, can sit in a library with a Wi-Fi, then it tells you that at least there's something to be remembered for. And it takes empathy, is to see these kids walking to school knowing that you were there and that you can change something. So empathy is key. I think the next one is honesty. You have to be straight. I mean, it's one of the things I'm learning. I remember I was so harsh to one guy who was in my party because he had not been straight. And I was like, why do you do this? I'll never forget. It was like, Doc, you have to be calm. In this job, you find some of us, a lot of us, and you must pamper us more despite our shortcomings.
He knows.
Yeah, he told me, and these are things I've learned, that you enter some trades like politics, and you don't get too upset because you found something which doesn't conform to your principles. You have to find a way of achieving your targets whilst at the same time seeing how to manage some people. And funny enough, politics is one of the only jobs or trades that even if an ex-armed robber says that now I've joined, if he's not going to steal your thing, you have to work with the person. Because it's not like a church where they'll say you didn't obey these 3 rules, so you've been disbanded. It's not like a company, YFM, where they say you were supposed to report 9, you came at 11.
Yeah.
I mean, in politics, even when you try to put the thing in order, it can rather be a recipe for disaster.
True.
So it's not an easy trade, and it lends you to. I tell people, if you can manage any entity in politics, you can manage a lot of facilities, because that place the rules are undulating. They are not as firm and rigid as other trades, and it's about numbers. So even if the person is a problem, the person's number counts. But in the company, if your person is the problem, your number is irrelevant.
Well, I think it's basically a topic of mandates and numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, provided the person is able to pull in numbers, because numbers really matter. It's a stake for the people.
Yeah.
So if the people want that person, and the social values do not favor the person, I mean, still the person still gets to get it.
Absolutely.
Anyways, now, from your personal experience as a politician, how favorable or less favorable are the conditions for the grounds for young politicians? If a young person wants to get into politics, how favorable are things for them in there? And then the next question to that, is money really the most important currency to political success in Ghana, per your experience?
Yeah, from my experience, I mean, I resorted to a lot of community activism in my politics, as in doing projects, rallying people around a common cause, trying to identify a problem, let's say rape, seeing how to solve the problem and all that. But there were many occasions where money became the issue, because there are folks that you work with, you relate so well with, and all of a sudden they're upset all the time. And you don't understand until one day maybe you give them money and then they are smiling and they are happy. So there are occasions where you realize that money is the problem, And one thing to which I can honestly say is that over time, unfortunately, the citizenry or the voter is becoming sort of conscious in the angle of money, where now it's like, give me something so I look at you. And it is dangerous not only for the politician but also for the citizen, because I tell people jokingly that if that's the way you go, you can get a funny guy who will bring money from somewhere, occupy a seat, and end up selling the whole community to an entity so that you be enslaved. So I think it's something that we have to look at. And to be honest, because of the way the citizenry sees politics, politicians and all that, over time, unconsciously, I say unconsciously because they might not know what they are doing. Unconsciously, they are making politics a fertile ground for those with big pockets, that with big minds or big brains or big hearts. You see, so that is the risk, and that's why I believe that even if you don't have money, if you're a young person, you still have to offer yourself. That's if you are convinced that you want to do politics, public office, be in there, because we need a few good minds, a few good hearts to be able to keep the extreme people in check.
That's true.
Sometimes you don't have to tip the thing to your side. You just have to keep it in equilibrium, because it will take a long time to get those who don't have good hearts out of the system. But at least, if there's one person in a room who is minded or driven by what will impact citizens positively, those guys who are not like that are aware that this guy is around. So sometimes only because of one person, the discussions and the topic will change. But if we are not there at all because we say we don't have the size of pockets that they have, that would be disaster for all of us.
So we still have to get in. Anyhow.
We have to get in there, yes.
And you did through community work.
Yes.
You earned the trust, the mandate of the people through community work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you get support in terms of funding from, because obviously these projects were not fully funded by the government.
Yeah.
You had support from individuals, or you had to fund things out of your pocket?
I remember there was one Alhaji that was able to get a job somewhere because I also spoke or did some advocacy for him. And he called me and said, Doc, what do you want me to do for you? Anything. And I was like, Alhaji, there is this footbridge that kids used to go to school in my community, not far from Lekman Hospital. I went to use it myself. It's very wobbly, very old. Even when you are crossing the stream, it goes over a storm drain. You can actually see through the frame. You can see the stream. So it's dangerous. And a lot of folks have called me and all that. One guy actually came to the consulting room and only complained about that. and Alhaji was like, I'm going to do it for you. And he sent people. He has a construction firm. He actually paid the construction firm. They came, took drawings. The project cost, when I saw the cost of the project, about 250,000 Ghana cedis.
You could have asked for a Mercedes Benz.
Yes, you could have. Yes, you could have given you personal. But like I say, because that problem was solved, the joy is that I can take my car or my bicycle, go and stand by the bridge, maybe observe some people, kids cross, and then you go home smiling. And Alhaji was amazed. And up to today, because of what happened, he tells me, Doc, you are not a member of parliament, but when you see anything you want to do, I'm ready to come on board. Because he knows that not everybody comes to ask for. And what is interesting is that on the day we're going to commission the footbridge, the same folks who are complaining about the bad nature of the bridge, some were either being funny, trying to run away from the commissioning, not to be part of it, or trying to behave like they don't know about it. And then I realized that there are folks who complain about a problem not because they want to solve it, but complaining about it makes them relevant. Make people think that they are the people who are conscious of the problems of the community.
That's actually a very true fact.
Exactly. And these are some of the things you learn when you get into real politics, real leadership, community activity, so that you get to know that it's not anyone who cries about a problem who wants the problem to be solved. And these are things that, so that you don't get so confused when it materializes. And it's sad. I also realized that it is possible that you might get more votes using fiscal cash, the 250,000 for this. Maybe if it had been shared,
you could have still been
to those in that area. Maybe they would have voted. But the question is that, is it worthy to be in office for 10, 15, 20 years?
With no impact?
With no impact. Or be there for 4 years and be remembered for 20 years. I think I would go for 4 with a bigger impact.
Wow, that's a great one. Can you guys applaud, please? Let's do this one. I'm loving this already. Wow. And so, your personal initiatives, right, like what you just mentioned, and engagements with your constituents during your time as member of parliament are well documented. I mean, everyone saw it, and to a large extent, much admired across, the divide. On the back of your recent exit from parliament, do you think there were certain instances you failed your constituents in terms of the manner of approach to your duty or the way in which it was commuted to the masses? I mean, you mentioned earlier that your days in Cape Coast were fine. You did good. You thought you were just serving the right purpose, but along the line you found out how you approached certain things were not, favorable for the system you found yourself. Did you think there were things you didn't do right in your constituency that might have led to this?
When I sit, I knew that my place is a difficult place for the MPP. So I knew that I had to push myself to the limit if I had to win the seat for the second time. There are some seats, and forgive me, both MPP and DC, we have such seats. If, let's say, I'm an MP, or I go and contest for a seat in, let's say, K2 South, I can push myself extremely as an MPP candidate. But traditionally, that by the nature of the constituency, this is a constituency that will vote for DC. It's like an NDC guy also who goes for Bantama. So really, I knew that my constituency is those constituencies that anytime the NDC wins, they win with a margin of average 10,000 plus. That's the gap.
Yeah.
The difference. So if you are going to contest such a seat, you should know that you have a challenge to close a gap that is in the tens of thousands. I mean, that's a big mountain to climb. Now, even in 2016, when I won as the MP, the presidential was won by JM. So even in 2016, I won parliamentary, but the NDC won presidential. It means that their party strength, should all their party people say they are voting a particular way, they would have won the seat.
They would have.
But there was some 2,000 who went to the other side. So that tells you the nature. Now, 2020, with all the things that President Akufo-Addo have convinced government to do this mega project, JM still had 59,000 plus. President Akufo-Addo had 50,000. The difference in the presidential votes was 9,000 plus votes. So what it means is that from the word go, in terms of party strength, their default of our average 10,000 was still there, even with all that government had done nationally and in my community. But with the parliamentary, the gap was about 1,005. 1,005, 1,006. Now what it means is that we still managed to get close to 4,000, 5,000 people who, by their setting, were in these folks. And I say setting because there are people who vote for a particular party no matter what the other party does. That's the default voters. And I am convinced that most of the 59,000 that the NDC had largely are default, because that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I believe that we have a president who didn't disgrace himself as a leader. We had a president who had implemented policies that had cut across the country, that had touched lives, touched all kinds of tribes and families. We had a president that was leading us in the pandemic, had given us water to support us, electricity. So really, the president's votes and Mama's votes tells you that to a large extent, this is the default voters. This is the strength of the party traditionally. So it means traditionally, their difference is 9,000 to 10,000 votes ahead of us. So if you're an MPP guy who wants to win, like Amewu did in Hohoi, you have a mountain to break.
Yes, a very big one.
Exactly. So you can see that the parliamentary vote was about 45,000 votes ahead of even the presidential. And even with all that effort, still, it took we need maybe 2,000 or 1,000 something votes to take the seat. Now, because I knew of all this, from day one as the MP, I went on the ground to work. And when I sit back, looking at the things that I did with the community, there's only one thing that sometimes comes to mind, that, okay, maybe if this had been done, maybe that extra 1,000 or 2,000 would have changed. And which is that? I go like, okay, maybe instead of going to work or go to the ministry, when I get up, I can go and sit at the beach and just be sitting by them to talk to them and go like, tell me your problem. But there are areas that I had visited on numerous occasions, supported them, done projects for them. And still, when you visit, sometimes you get a cold reception. So then you realize that as a leader, there are some things that will take some time to break. You see, you have to be honest with yourself as a leader. Now look, I know a group that had visited as an MP over 3-4 times, and they themselves are aware that in the past it will be difficult for an MP to visit you once in a year. And they admit that this is someone who comes to us 3-4 times.
3-4 times.
And yet, still sometimes you get a cold reception. And you come and you ask them, let's chat, and sometimes they will not talk. It's because, some see their party like a tradition. It's like a House of Folk supporter. You can't go and tell him
for them.
Exactly. They see it like a heritage. And that's why I admit and knew from day one that, look, my mom was NDC. Sometimes when you talk to her, she's so passionate. I remember one day she go like, look, if you don't stop doing these things, I'll stop paying your fees. Because one day I was very critical at Rollins. And I was like, oh, calm down, it's going to go to that level. But she's a typical example.
Yes.
And look, there was a time, I mentioned this to a friend the last time. My mom passed before I became MP. She passed away, I think, somewhere in 2013.
May her soul rest in peace.
Those days, when I was rallying the community for the MPP as a party, doing Lejukuku for Akufo-Addo 2012, she had to come on board. She had to now sit in our meetings, be a place where I was. But you could see that she was nervous sometimes. So she called one of my very trusted guys. And I was like, is there no way you can talk to your brother to do NDC? Because almost all her friends were leaving her.
Oh.
You know, so to have her colleagues, mates, try to abandon her because the son is doing open partisan politics, it tells you how deep some of their perceptions are, even if unfounded. So when you're a leader and you are visiting people severally and they are still resisting, it means that with time it will be broken. It's a matter of time. And that's why I believe that the Coastal Project, like I call it, as in trying to work on coastal folks to appreciate some of the thinking and ideologies of the MPP, is something that would succeed with time.
With all this said, I mean, knowing the fact that
and sorry, I mentioned this example of having visited some groups 2-3 times and they still resisting. To answer the question, I asked myself that if you had been sitting by them 24/7, not even go to work,
would you still have? Yeah.
Would it have made a difference? You know,
would it have really made any difference, anyways? Yeah. But I mean, with all this being said, I just want to understand how you sort of like received the news when you found out back in school. I mean, you slept, woke up, and then heard the news. But now it would come off as a huge disappointment to anybody. Yeah. But you, with all you just said, I mean, would it be right if we say you were not disappointed when you didn't win? Like you understood them?
Yeah. Yes. I think one factor is knowing how they are.
Their nature.
Yes. I knew that it was not going to be easy. You see, look, the candidate I contested, or who contested me, interacted with less than 3% of the population. I say that without any shred of doubt. And even the NDC admit, he virtually didn't interact with anybody. So virtually, I went out there to talk to a group who had not experienced the other side. So for that person to get more than 50-something thousand votes, he had about 55,000 plus. I had 54,000 plus. To get that quantum, when I know in my heart that it's someone who had not gone to them, it tells you, speaks to the nature, that for them this is where they are.
Yeah.
Now I also appreciate the thousands who might have belonged to the other side, but voted to my side because they've seen the effort and the transformation that is happening in the community. Because I knew them, I wasn't too disappointed. One other reason to why I was calm was that, look, like I said, what do you choose? 8 years or 12 years of being at a place where the appreciation for the commitment is not that significant, or 4 years of transforming or of setting the path for transformation and leaving the people to judge based on their other experiences that this is a worthy or this was a worthy cause. I think that at the end of the day, I felt that, look, I mean, the legacy will speak for itself. And also, like I said, it's not like I needed the seat to do something that could be achieved in life only with a seat.
Yes.
I just wanted opportunity to transform lives.
To get the work done.
Exactly. And like this library and staff common that I want to build for my school, we are actually breaking grounds on the 22nd of this month, 2 weeks' time. This can be done without the title of Member of Parliament. So I just told myself that you have to be cool. You just pray that God keeps you in positions or in an orientation where your influence from your personal drive and other contacts would come, so that you continue to impact the community. And that is why I have been calm. And the Christ factor is also key.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the most, if you read the Bible, Christ was most resisted from where he was born.
Yes, his hometown.
Because they ask questions like, and people ask those questions at my place. I know someone who voted against me or who was cold at me because he told folks, I know this guy. When I was playing soccer, he used to come and play around me. And it's true. I used to play around him. He knows me, he knows my beginning. And people sometimes despise you if they think that, how can this guy who I know be the one going to places? So Christ, people ask questions like, is it not Joseph's son? Whose siblings are
son
ABC?
Of the carpenter?
Yeah, exactly. But when he goes to other places, because of what comes from him, he has to swerve in the night because they will not allow him to leave. And I realized realized that thing also in my life. So it gives you some comfort when you know that 2,000 years ago, 2020 years ago, I mean, these things have been played out, and then you always, the best way to send a signal to those who thought that they were cutting short the dream is to stick to the words of Churchill, who said true failure is the ability true success.
Yes.
Is the ability to move from one failure
to the next,
or one disappointment to the other without any loss of enthusiasm. When they see the fire, then they ask themselves, what happened? But we thought to kill the fire. So the fire must be on. And once the fire is on, anything and everything is possible.
With that being said, should we expect a comeback in the next parliamentary elections, Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye?
Like I said, I am not the kind that will say it is the seat or
nothing. It's either the seat or nothing.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm not that kind. Mine is that it's either impact for community or nothing. And if the impact will come from doing regional politics, being active at the regional level,
why not?
Being active at the national level, being active at the constituency level, is impact or nothing.
Okay, so it's impact or nothing, but I know definitely well with all that you've said that your constituents still need a lot of things done. There are still projects that need to be tackled.
Yeah.
And you said in the past that you are the type that would want to assume the position that is right to actually implement a positive change. And so this is a yes, right?
I wouldn't say so. The point is that any position that allows you to make impact.
Okay, so maybe it might be bigger.
It might be bigger.
It might be bigger. All right, we're going to hold on to that. Final thing about about politics. After the elections, I mean, there were widespread rumors about some of your constituents saying you were voted out because you were not attending naming ceremonies and funerals. You heard that, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel when you heard that? Did you think it was funny? I mean,
there are two things. First of all, it's possible that genuinely someone who had outdooring would have wished for me to be there. Going for an outdooring is not something that puts me off at all. In fact, there are folks who they didn't even have a grand outdooring, which I would say I was attracted to because I'll get to meet voters. Some had just some sitting in their rooms, and I was there to sit by them. So the point is that if maybe the fellow did not get the opportunity to get me to come, but I don't undermine such things. But there's also the other factor. I come from Teshi.
Yeah.
They are my people. I know them. You can have someone who can vote against you, maybe out of spite, just has no reason, just doesn't want you to.
Yeah.
And when asked that, why did you do that? The fellow must find something.
They would have to cook up a reason. Yeah.
And that's where you find reasons that might not be too strong. I remember there was a lady who was interviewed who said, he's not the only one who's gone to school. If it's chop some, someone should come and chop some. And even if I'd come and given all of them gold,
they would have still voted you out.
Yeah,
I get it. That's all on the side. I mean, put that all behind us. Yeah. Now, moving on. So somewhere around last year, COVID-19 just sprung up. The pandemic has been an unprecedented event. Well, as a medical doctor and a man of science, did you envision a time like this when our very existence would experience such an abrupt interference?
Well, I love history. I've read a few books. There's this book, Why Nations Fail. It's a very powerful book. You have to get it. I think every black person who is learned, who has read, can read and write, should read that book. It gives you an idea why certain systems appear very advanced, other systems are challenged, why nations fail. And it tells you that the reason why some nations are very prosperous is that they allow democracy and a free system where if you have the right to think and invent and innovate, you are rewarded. And that once a system starts to be autocratic and kill drive, that system goes towards poor living standards or becomes a poor system. Now, that book spoke about how systems can change. It spoke about rebellions. It spoke about revolutions. And then he also spoke about how plagues, disease, you can have a situation where a plague can wipe out almost half of a country or all of a country. And if those few who are left start all over well, then their system can be built from scratch. And that's why he spoke about some of the plagues that happened.
The bubonic plague.
Exactly. And all this, they called it plagues then because science was not advanced to identify the virus. These were like what we have now. So I wasn't surprised at all. The only thing is that in our time, I knew that when a plague or an epidemic is coming, we'll be able to know its name.
Yes.
Be able to know that this is what is happening, and that's what we have in our case. And so it's part of our development trajectory. And unfortunately, we are in a time where we have what we call biological weapons. I'm not saying that's what happened.
Yeah.
But if you've developed to the extent where you can artificially produce pathogens, that disease-causing organisms, you should not be surprised when some weird pathogen comes out. And movies. A lot of movies, there are movies that have been made where a pathogen in the lab escaped.
Yes.
And these things, people think they are not just imaginations. They are inspired by what technology allows you to do or science allows you to do currently. So the point is that when you get to this level of development as a world or as a globe, some of these things can happen. And again, that's not to say that the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus was invented in the lab.
I get
But it's just to admit that once it happened so many years ago, I knew that it could happen now.
Yeah,
especially when you live in a time where even pathogens can be produced. Don't be surprised at any weird pathogen.
But personally, at what point did you begin to realize the severity of this pandemic and the effect it would have on the way of our lives?
Well, I mean, when I read about the outbreak in China, and I was then a member of parliament on the health committee. I read a communique from the Ministry of Health saying that there is the WHO had declared COVID-19 as a pandemic because it had caused disease in certain jurisdictions and people were feeling unwell and all that. Because of my training, I had a fair idea of what we're dealing with. I knew we were dealing with a virus that was transmitted through contact, that could also move in through the air. I also knew because of the influenza virus, I knew that most viruses cause cold and discomfort, but influenza kills in a few people when you have challenges yourself, what refer to as comorbidities, other illness. So when I read about COVID-19, I knew that it was going to be either like influenza or a little bit more than influenza. And I think largely that's what it has turned out to be, that it is a virus that causes cold like others, but it can kill. That's what makes it different. It can get worse in some people. And fortunately, unfortunately, even if it kills 0.1% of those it affects, once we are in a global village now, it's a lot of big news.
Yes.
And that's not to say the numbers we are having is not big news. But when it started, those who were victims were not like that significant. But the news went far because we are in a global world. News, I mean, we're in YFM studio, but I'm sure even when you're on an app anywhere in the world, you can be on it. So all I can say is that it is the nature of the virus, the scientific nature, the genetic nature, the dynamics of disease transmission, which is still being learned by scientists. But in terms of the disease transmission and how it's behaving, I don't think it's too far from what we expected. Yeah.
Okay. Now, from the onset, you personally played a key role in demystifying the gravity of the pandemic to the admiration of all. As a healthcare professional, how would you describe your experience on the front line fighting COVID-19? It's been a year, I think. How has the work been so far? What were the dynamics in the combat against COVID-19 from the beginning till now?
Well, although I'm out of office as the member of parliament, I still am on the government COVID task force team. Yeah. So we still get the opportunity to bring our experience and expertise to bear when it comes to the COVID management. Let me say that it's been very challenging this past 1 year. It's a mixture of challenge versus innovation and thinking where you are pushed to the limit, because we have the science and the theory of the virus. But now we have to look at what is happening in our setting to decide on policy for our own experience. And like they tell you when you study medicine is global.
Yes.
But its practice is local. So you can't say that, okay, when you take COVID-19, normally it moves through the air. It affects 70 to 90 people badly. It is possible that you're certain it will not be 70 to 90, but it will be, let's say, 16 years. And so it took a lot of effort. It's still taking a lot of effort to try to make people appreciate what we are dealing with, to try to break it down in a language that everybody will understand, and to let people appreciate the principles for staying alive so that they don't get too jittery. And I particularly got very much involved because I saw some vacuum. I realized that folks didn't know what was happening, and all they could hear was that this thing can kill. This thing can kill. This thing can kill. And I knew that if you don't explain and come out to communicate, a lot of folks can die from the fear of having a disease that can kill, and not from the disease that can kill itself.
That's true. That's true.
So in the US, they did some studies and realized that over-the-counter anxiety drugs for anxiety had gone up by 36%.
Yeah, because the anxiety around the whole virus was going up.
Yes.
So people were not actually fighting the virus itself, they were fighting anxiety around it.
And that tells you that you need to do a lot of education. And that's why I had to explain to people, look, if you have to speak to the virus, though they have the UK variant and the South African variant, the virus basically remains the same. It remains the same as in it's going to get into you most likely through your nostrils or through a surface, something that touches your face. The virus remains basically the same because when it enters you, it's not going to target your stomach, but it's coming for your lungs. The virus remains virtually the same in that, look, I use your studio as a classical example. Once we are in such an enclosed space, if we chat for 2 hours and all of us don't have a mask, it means within 1 hour, the air we are breathing is a sharing, it's a mixture of vapor and particles from all of us. If my particles have the virus, by 2 days' time, all of us would have shared it nicely. So if I come here and I am rigid about my mask, it's not that I'm saying there's no way I'll get it, but the risk of getting it has gone down significantly.
Yes.
So what you have to engage in, like we say, is what we refer to as risk reduction behavior. That's what I tell people, reduce your risk. Someone says, close the schools. If you close the schools, you come to the mall, you can get it. You
Let's just reduce the risk at the various places.
When you go to your work and get it, in your car, you pick something, you can get it. It's not about zero risk, it's about risk reduction. So what you ask is, what are in the schools to reduce the risk? Are they adequately spaced? Are the windows open? Are the kids washing their hands? Once those measures are there, then you know that the chance of getting it has gone down. But you can't guarantee zero risk, even in the ICU, where the doctors have gone from top to bottom. They record cases. So you are dealing with a virus who doesn't fear overall or coverall, let alone your mask. But you wear your risk. Exactly. You engage in a risk reduction behavior so that your chance of getting it drops significantly. And if all of us engage in these behaviors, we are good to go.
We, in the beginning of last year, I mean, somewhere around when the virus sprung up, the general public, I mean, half of the public were with the school of thoughts that the virus didn't even exist here. You guys are on the front line fighting tirelessly to ensure that we bring down the numbers, and people are still out there, still sending rumors out. People are saying it's killed by sunshine. People are saying if you drink alcohol. What are your general, what are your observations, or what do you think about how people have responded to COVID-19 in Ghana so far, or by far?
Yeah, if you look at cold viruses or viruses that cause common cold, there are some things that are unique about them. They appear to be more active when temperatures drop, and that's why they call it common cold. Common because they are almost everywhere. We say they are ubiquitous. You know, the things that make you get a flu, some cold, and they are virus. They are everywhere. They are with us. But the cold is added because when things get colder, then they become more active.
Okay.
So viruses normally, classically, don't die per se. They are around, but something activates them. So immediately from day one, I was one of the people who said, look, if you are at a cold region, the chance of the virus being very active is high.
Yeah.
So when people say that heat kills it, there's a little bit of the science in there. But it doesn't mean you use heat to misbehave. Because, well, let's say I meet you at Accra Mall, long time, I say, Charlie, how? I give you a very nice shake, and I've sneezed before shaking you, I've not washed my hands. Even if you're in the sun, once you also have some eye itch or nose itch and you take your hands to you would have introduced the virus straight into your nostril. So the hot environment didn't keep the virus at bay. But if, let's say I'm having a chat with you in the open sun, and we've not even kept a distance, although we are close, because of the other conditions, it makes it difficult for the virus to move from one person to the other easily.
Yeah.
So you have to just appreciate the principles of the movement. And once you get the principles, there's no hard and fast about it to say that, oh, Charlie, as for because of the temperature. I gave the thing directly to you, I held your hands. So what has temperature got to do with it? So I also don't want people to mistake the nature or conditions that a virus likes to say that, oh, when it is hot, then you can misbehave. Some even go and join crowds, do what they like, and when they get home, they do steam inhalation. I mean, the virus will not be waiting from the morning or afternoon that you will join the people for your steam in the evening. It would have gone into your lungs. So really, just appreciate the fact that cold places that are enclosed for public education are the biggest drivers now of spread. A cold place that is enclosed. Once it's cold and enclosed, if anybody introduces a particle in the air, that same particle is moving for a long time
circulating there
and can get to others, especially if there's no mask. But if you're in an open environment, then the risk is significantly reduced. And like I said, it's all about reducing your risk.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, in terms of the government's approach to COVID-19, initially there was an adoption of the 3 T's approach, which is testing, tracing, and treatment. How comprehensive and sustained was this approach in the face of the recent spike in infections? I mean, the new wave and the way numbers have gone up. Are we still maintaining the 3 T's? Are they still on?
Yeah, so when you look at tracing, testing, and treatment, they have been the universal strategy for the government, and we still are using. In fact, if you remember when the COVID started, there were some 5 pillars we were using. The first one is to stop the importation of the virus. And as we speak, the testing regime at the airport and all that is to make sure that as much as possible, you catch people who have the virus. When I checked the last time, over 1,300 people were caught at the airport. Caught as in tested positive.
Yes.
Although they showed us PCR, which is positive. So if you didn't have that testing regime at the airport, it means your risk would have been very high. It means you would have had 1,300 people enter your country.
Coming in to infect
and each
people.
person has the potential to create, you remember our first few cases of COVID were 4 or so. And we went to 8,000 active cases. The whole country was in a lockdown. So you don't need 1,000 cases to get a big problem. So that is a very good strategy. So we are still having that strategy in place. The second one was to limit community spread.
Yeah.
And that one had to do with mask wearing and all that. And as we speak, we are still preaching mask wearing. The community spread also supports schools with sanitizers and Veronica buckets. Government is trying its best to keep these things in motion. The third one we said was to provide adequate care for the sick. In fact, I think adequate care for the sick was the third one, either third or fourth, but I remember adequate care for the sick is in. That's where you have to make sure you have ventilators. Hospitals have oxygen cylinders so that they can give oxygen to those who are sick. The frontline people have to be motivated. That's why we give zero exemption of taxes for all health workers. We did that for about 6 months. Exactly. Then the fourth one was to reduce the adverse effect of the pandemic. That's where government tried to, give some soft loans to some small and medium enterprises. Banks were told to hold on with their loan reclaimants for small companies. I was with a businessman who even told me that, look, he got a $500,000 loan from one of the banks. His business had virtually grounded because of the COVID. They came to him, pay, and he told them, look at the government's intervention, the moratorium. If you charge me, if you say I should pay, write a letter so I go and show it to the president.
Yes.
And they all were like, okay. So the point is that we are conscious of the fact that there will be adverse effects on businesses, livelihoods, and we had a policy. And then the fifth one was to build local capacity. When we started with COVID, even this face mask, the one your producer is wearing, the blue one, which we call the surgical mask, all of them were being imported into the country. Today, as we speak, there's local capacity. Ghana has the capacity to produce over 500,000 of this in a day. It took COVID to build that local capacity. So government is still has this strategy of building capacity. But with your tracing, testing, testing, and treatment, what happened was that at a point, our cases, we had very few active cases. And you see, tracing means that all you do with tracing is to go after those who have come near a positive person. So if you have 100 active cases in the whole country, and you are going after their contacts, if each of the 100 has 10 contacts, it means you are following 1,000 people.
That's true.
But if at a point you get maybe 5,000 cases, and you are going for each of the 5,000 active, you are chasing 10 for each, you have 50,000 people to go after. So the point is that it's not like we stopped with the contact tracing, but because the numbers became so low, the contacts were following through were low. So we had to dissolve and let go of some of the gangs or the groups that were doing the contact tracing. But when the cases started going up, we had to do a recouping of these gangs. So when I hear people say that, oh, we stopped doing our contact tracing, no, I mean, naturally, if your cases go down, we got to a point, we didn't even have anyone in our isolation centers. They were empty. We had to close down the Pentecost Convention Center, which was using as our Kaswa. We closed it down because there were no people in there. Most of our treatment facilities were zero occupied. Professor Pimpon Boating had a facility in Ashanti region. I went to inspect it. Those times during the COVID, it accepted cases. We went there, it was zero. They even had to now turn into a normal hospital. So what is happening in Ghana is not a national phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon. In most countries, they also had the same thing. Where things virtually went away, they also started going back to normal. And then the second wave sent them back to their active forms.
Great. Now, you mentioned treatment and, building local capacity for masks and some of the things that will help us. I mean, PPEs, basically, how to stay away from the virus, reduce the risk of infections. What about treatment? I mean, currently, what is the official position of the Ghana Health Service on combination of herbal remedies, being widely circulated? There's a lot of rumor out there on supposed herbal, medicine that can cure the virus, and that. Are there any steps by the Ghana Health Service to incorporate some of these, said health remedies together with the orthodox medication to ensure we treat COVID-19 victims?
Yeah, we have quite a number of herbal preparations that claim that they can help to boost your immune system. As for herbal preparations that have been approved as food supplements, we have quite a number of them already approved by the FDA. They are supplements. And supplements are assumed to combine with your food generally to make you strong. So, really, you can walk to any pharmacy shop and get a herbal preparation from Ghana which is approved as a supplement. What we don't have is a herbal preparation that is an antiviral agent.
Okay.
Antiviral meaning that it is a COVID medicine. We don't have such a thing. And even globally, we don't have a drug as we speak, which is the cure for COVID. Anyone who recovered from COVID recovered using their own immune system. All other things we give them is supportive therapy or supportive care.
Okay.
That's how the doctors call it. So if we give you oxygen, we are giving you oxygen because the virus has invaded some parts of your lungs and your oxygen concentration is dropping, so we support you. If we give you antibiotics, it's because when there's fluid in your chest as a result of the viral activity, you can have bacteria, what we refer to as bacterial superimposition or superinfection. You have bacteria taking advantage of what is happening to come and play around, so that you don't end up dying from the bacterial infection rather than fighting the virus. So we come and give you antibiotic cover so that we give you the support as you meander your way using your immune system to clear the virus. If we should give you an antiviral agent, it's because we know that that agent, when it enters you, at least has some chemicals that will make maybe life uncomfortable for the virus. The point is that we are, like you read recently, there was a local product that has been put on clinical trial. Clinical trial means that it's been allowed to be given to some of our patients to see whether there is an improvement in the condition, or there's a fast rate of recovery in those who received it versus the controlled group. And control group in research means that those who did not get anything compared to those who you intervened.
Actually,
You know, so these are things that are still going on. And I made my assistant speak to a few people about their vaccine acceptance, whether they were going for a vaccine. And a lot of the commentary reports, response we got says that, look, if this vaccine is developed in Ghana or Africa or by Ghanaian doctors, I'll go for them. Some said we prefer local solution. So there's a lot of trust for local remedy.
What is produced,
and that is why it's something that we must take a serious look at.
It's very good you brought that up. Final question on that, the vaccines, and I was going to ask if we're getting that anytime soon, but I mean, that is widespread rumor. But does the government have plans of funding, helping, local researchers financially to develop vaccines for COVID-19? Since a lot of the people are saying if it's produced here, they're most likely to get shots or get treatment from that.
Yeah, so there are two parts in vaccine development. You need the lab and apparatus that would develop the antigen itself. And this, I want to say the antigen, the thing that will be given to you for your body to produce the immunity that you need, right? You need the lab and the infrastructure. When I say the infrastructure, you need a setup to safely look at a virus, try and look at how it behaves, or even yourself trying to create something that looks like the virus. Then there's the other one, which is the production capacity.
The production capacity, yeah.
Which is the factory that can produce what you've made in the lab in huge numbers. What Africa has, or can work quickly towards, which that needs capital investment, is building that factory that can reproduce the vaccine in the millions. The other one, which is the technical know-how, the laboratory, the infrastructure, is usually honestly built over time. Even if you have $1 billion now, if you want to build capacity for developing vaccines, you will not do it in a year because you have the money. So these are the places where vaccines are developed, like the Pfizer's and like the AstraZeneca's and the Johnson's. These are pharmaceutical companies that have built capacity over years. And the reason why a company like Topinco or NS Chemists can do paracetamol but not do maybe a vaccine is that the investment and capacity you have to build
is on that level.
So it's a long-term project.
Okay.
In fact, some of us have been saying it should be an African project or a regional project. Let's say ECOWAS.
Beyond COVID.
Exactly, yes. So that you can pool resources and then have those labs. And the good thing about science now is that if they develop the vaccine or an antigen, if you have the infrastructure already, they can even share the chemical equation which they used
and then have
and give it to you, and then you don't have to start from ground zero. It's like making a car. Maybe you will not have the capacity to start from ground zero, but if you have the blocks for cutting engines and things, the one who's made a good engine will give you the formula that it was using this formula to do the first stroke. Then you can use it from there. But if you don't have the infrastructure, they can even give you the blueprint.
That's true.
But you cannot. So government hasn't shied away. But immediately, what we can do is to have the production capacity. Nigeria has a plant that can produce vaccines. Ghana, I know one pharmaceutical company that this year would commission one of the most modern German plants that can produce vaccines and drips and all that. So the next thing is to try and talk to the patent holders, those who develop the vaccine, and then through an arrangement they can say that, okay, we are allowing you to produce.
That means we're on course, if you ask me, right?
Yes, it's not an easy road. It's not going to be a short, quick road, but we've stepped on the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. A few weeks ago, I think about 2 weeks ago, the president announced that there's free testing for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Briefly, let us know who and who are eligible for that.
Yeah, I think the Ghana Health Service came out to clarify that particular thing, that it's not like you can just walk in like the way I came to YFM. Like, look,
test me.
I feel like I'm COVID, to test. What was happening was that you have situations where a patient, let's say, walks into Lekma Hospital the person is having a fever, has been unwell for a week or two, has taken antibiotics and still unwell. And let's say I am taking COVID. When I ask the person to go test, more often than not, they are supposed to, they end up paying. So, unlike the contact tracing that government is doing where they come after you, test you, and it's for free. So then we realize that no, we have to put in place a policy that will make sure that money doesn't become a barrier. Because if the fellow cannot afford the test, then the fellow might not even come to me with the result. And I also not know the result to know what to do with the patient. So what the communication should have been was that there was a letter from the Ministry of Health signed by the Chief Director, but later we clarified it. The communication is that if you are referred from a government facility, of being a suspected COVID case with the referral, then the test will be done and it will be paid by the state. Okay. So I know at least 3 or 4 people that have referred to Kolebu. They went, they took their samples, they didn't pay anything. It's because it came as referral. What we are trying to discourage is people just walking and saying that, look, I met someone at the mall. They say he was COVID, so test me.
So the free testing is not for walk-ins. It is basically covers recommendation from medical practitioners. So if you go to a hospital bearing any symptoms and a doctor tests you for malaria or anything else and they realize it's not malaria, then based on the doctor's reference, they can say, okay, go and get tested. So if a doctor prescribes that you go get tested, then it's free.
Then it's free.
Okay,
it's free in a public lab.
At public hospitals.
Yes, public lab. Okay. We have reference labs. The labs are there. No, my doctor will even show you. I showed my patients where to go. So the public labs are there. All right. Noguchi is a public lab. Kolebu has a public lab. Reach has a public lab. Veterinary Services has a public lab. So we have them.
All right, but doctor, are these informations available on any platform?
That's why I came to YFM.
I like that. Like I said it all, man. Anyways, thank you so much for coming through, spending time with us on Wiley the Board series. We wish we could spend more time, on here to discuss more. There are a few things we might want to touch on, but maybe we might plan a day 2 for Dr. Okoe Boye's Wiley the Board series. There's been a lot of talk around COVID and coming up and all that. But final words from you. What would you say to a young healthcare professional out there listening now, young people out there who are working hard to innovate to solve the problems in our communities in the healthcare sector and of course in every other endeavor out there?
Yeah, what I would say is that we have to keep hope alive. There's still so much opportunity in this country. There's still so much you can do. You first of all need to have a very positive attitude. You got to be very, very humble and not have your own set of preferences for jobs, your own set of preferences for what life should look like. And then finally, you should not be scared of failing or not getting the expected result. It is in the failure that you pick the lessons that will provide for the next success. And so just step out. You have to step out and do something. Just get something to do. Whether you fail or not, for stepping out is victory for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. Dr. Bernard Okoe Boye has been my guest on Wiley the Board series today. He shared a lot. Guys, if you want to listen back, go to facebook.com/Y1079FM or search for Y1079FM on YouTube.
Congratulations. You found the one station that plays Ghana's best urban music.
YFM.
Listen to YFM 107.9 Accra, 102.5 Kumasi, and 97.9 at Takoradi.